The world had lived in peace for over 3,000 years. A peace forged by mutual fear and respect, a peace that was never questioned, until the sky changed. It was the kind of change that would have gone unnoticed by most, but for those paying attention, it was unmistakable. The vastness of the blue sky over New York City seemed darker, as if some colossal shadow had passed between the sun and the earth. Within seconds, it grew still, eerily still. And then came the voice. "We are the Kralexians. Prepare for your destruction. The 3,000-year peace is over." The voice reverberated through every speaker across the planet, loud, cold, and unyielding. Governments scrambled, military forces were activated, but none of it seemed to matter. The voice continued, an omnipresent reminder that peace, as humanity had come to know it, was an illusion. Captain Maya Richards watched the holographic display in her command room, her eyes narrowing as the Kralexian fleet filled the screen. The massive ships loomed over the Earth, hovering in geosynchronous orbit. One by one, they appeared, dark, irregular shapes with lines that pulsed with energy. No one on Earth had ever seen technology like this, and they were about to feel its consequences. "Maya, we've lost communication with the East Coast Defense Systems," Lieutenant Akash Patel said, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to remain composed. Maya turned, her expression unreadable. Akash was young, far too young to be thrust into such a dire situation, but here he was, one of the few capable pilots trained for deep space combat. "I'm aware, Akash," she replied, voice steady, betraying none of the shock she felt. It was her job to remain calm, to think, to act when others were paralyzed. But even she had never anticipated this level of chaos. Dr. Jonas Vancer, the ship's chief scientist, stood off to the side, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface, searching for something, anything, that could give them an edge. He had always been the one to approach problems with wit and sarcasm, but even his usual humor had deserted him in the face of an enemy that seemed so far beyond human comprehension. "Their ships are unbelievable," Jonas muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We're talking energy fields that should be impossible. We're looking at a technology that doesn't follow any of our laws of physics." Maya stepped forward, staring at the enormous display. The Kralexian ships, as if sensing her presence, pulsed again, each ship's energy field expanding and contracting, like a predator testing the waters before the kill. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Humanity had long been at peace, but the universe outside had never been silent. The Kralexians had waited for humanity's guard to drop. And now, the moment had come. "We're going to need more than physics to get out of this," Maya said grimly, turning toward Akash. "Prepare the Sovereign for launch. We're going to give them a taste of what happens when they mess with Earth." Akash swallowed hard but nodded, determination hardening his features. "Yes, ma'am." Maya didn't look back as she walked briskly to the command center. The Sovereign was the pinnacle of Earth's technological advancements, a new breed of fighter ship designed to match the capabilities of anything in deep space. And it was their last hope. Akash would be piloting it. He had never flown into enemy space before, but there was no time to waste. The room was heavy with the tension of people who knew the stakes but were still grappling with the magnitude of the threat. It wasn't just an alien invasion, it was an extinction-level event. But Maya wouldn't let fear dominate. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. "Status report," she demanded, her voice cutting through the silence. 50% of Earth's defense systems are down," Dr. Vancer replied, his fingers still moving frantically. "We're looking at a complete communications blackout in some regions. I'm trying to reroute signals, but it's no use. Their ships are using some kind of jamming field." Maya clenched her fists. They had no way of knowing how the Kralexians had learned to bypass humanity's defenses, but it didn't matter. They were outmatched. Still, she had faith in the one thing humanity could always rely on, their resilience. "I need every available asset on the ground," she ordered. "Get me those global leaders on the line. We need Earth united now." As she spoke, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching her. The Kralexians had made their move, and they would not stop until humanity was destroyed. The question was, what would Earth do in response? We don't know what their intentions are, Dr. Vancer added, looking up at her, his face pale. For all we know, they might want to conquer us. Or wipe us out entirely. But whatever it is, they're not here for peace. Maya stared at the screen once more, her mind racing. What is the best course of action? She wasn't just fighting for the survival of Earth. This was a test of humanity's very spirit, of what they stood for, of how they had evolved. A test of heroism, of strategy, of resolve. In times like these, there was no room for doubt. She had to lead them into the unknown, with no guarantees of success. There's no way to know what will happen next, Maya said slowly, more to herself than to anyone in the room. But we will stand firm. We will fight. She turned toward Akash as he entered the room, his uniform immaculate, his expression one of grim determination. Captain, the Sovereign is ready, Akash reported. He stood a little taller now, his youthful uncertainty replaced by the focused resolve that had earned him a place among the best. Then it's time, Maya said, meeting his gaze. Let's show them who we are. The tension crackled in the air as the Sovereign launched from Earth's surface, its sleek, angular frame cutting through the atmosphere. Akash gripped the controls, feeling the weight of the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. He had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared him for what awaited. Ahead of them, the massive Kralexian fleet waited, a dark, insurmountable force that loomed larger with each passing second. The 3,000-year peace was over. And the true battle had just begun. The Sovereign rumbled beneath Akash as it cut through the Earth's atmosphere, its sleek frame barely noticeable against the darkening sky. The craft's hull shimmered, a brilliant fusion of human engineering and alien technology, a testament to mankind's relentless desire to innovate, even in the face of extinction. Akash gripped the controls, the touch screen beneath his fingers cool and responsive. The battle ahead seemed impossible, yet here he was, standing on the precipice of history. His stomach tightened with a combination of fear and excitement, but he pushed it aside. This was it, there was no turning back now. Akash, are you with me? Maya's voice crackled over the comms, steady as ever. Always, Captain, Akash replied, keeping his tone as calm as he could, though the nerves in his chest spoke a different language. He glanced over his shoulder at the rearview, noting the smaller fleet of Earth's forces following close behind. It wasn't enough. They knew it, and the Kralexians knew it too. Good, Maya said, her tone sharp and focused. We're going in, no hesitation. They'll be expecting a standard assault. We're not giving them that. I want you to use every advantage we have. Akash nodded, eyes trained on the Kralexian fleet now visible in the distance. Their ships were like nothing he'd ever seen, immense and terrifying, with jagged edges and glowing patterns that seemed to ripple across their surfaces. It was a sight that would have sent most men running for cover, but not him. Not today. The Kralexians had made the first move. They had ended a peace that had lasted over 3,000 years, and now humanity had no choice but to respond. And respond they would. It was in their blood. They would not go down without a fight. The Sovereign's engine thrummed with power as Akash engaged the afterburners, pushing the ship forward into the heart of the oncoming battle. The ground shook beneath him as the sky split open with the sound of energy blasts, far-off echoes of destruction. Maya's voice was cool but intense in his ear. They're faster than we expected. Get in close, Akash, and take them by surprise. Yes, Captain, he said, voice firm as he concentrated on the navigation panel. A fleet of Kralexian warships, glowing with energy, hovered just outside Earth's atmosphere. But their movements were erratic, their formations disorganized, almost as if they didn't believe humanity could pose a threat. That was their mistake. Akash twisted the controls hard, the Sovereign's wings cutting through the chaos. Energy blasts flared in all directions, nearly grazing the craft's shields. He could feel the heat radiating off them, the energy so intense it vibrated through his bones. Sweat gathered at his brow, and his heart raced, but his hands were steady as he piloted the ship deeper into enemy territory. You've got two coming at you from the left, Maya warned. Evade, now. Akash snapped the ship into a roll, narrowly avoiding the incoming fire. The Kralexians were relentless, their precision terrifying. They didn't seem to care that the odds were against them. But neither did humanity. Captain, I've located their weak spot, Dr. Jonas' voice interrupted through the comms, calm and collected despite the chaos. Their main ship, the Harbinger, is using an unstable power source. If we hit it just right, we might be able to take them out with one strike. Akash's pulse quickened. This was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. One shot, one chance to end the war before it truly began. But the question was, could they make it? We'll have to get close enough to launch a direct hit, Akash said, eyeing the massive Kralexian ship now within firing range. It was a floating fortress, its exterior covered in dark ridges that absorbed the sunlight, casting a shadow that threatened to swallow everything in its path. The ship's surface seemed almost alive, rippling with an unnatural energy. Akash, stay focused, Maya's voice was stern, but he could hear the edge of concern beneath it. We can't afford to miss this. Move in. Now. He didn't hesitate. He gripped the throttle with both hands and propelled the Sovereign into a dive toward the Kralexian ship. The planet's surface loomed below, a patchwork of cities and forests, but there was no time to look back. The Harbinger was their target, and nothing else mattered. As they approached, Akash's hands danced over the controls, triggering evasive maneuvers and preparing the ship's weapons systems. His breath came faster now. This was the moment, one strike, one chance to take the lead. The Kralexian ship was almost within range. The Sovereign was built for precision, but even their best could miss at this speed. The Harbinger's weapons blared again, and the air around Akash was filled with the sound of crackling energy. He swerved to avoid the blasts, his ship groaning under the strain. Sweat slicked his skin, but he kept his eyes fixed ahead. He could hear Maya's voice in his ear, her steady encouragement urging him on. Get closer, Akash. You're almost there. Suddenly, an explosion ripped through the silence. A wave of heat and sound washed over him, and for a moment, the world around him seemed to distort. The Sovereign's systems screamed as power fluctuated, and the targeting screen flickered in and out. But Akash wasn't about to let this slip through his fingers. He forced the ship into a sharp climb, narrowly avoiding another blast. His hands were moving on instinct now, but his focus never wavered. The Harbinger was right in front of him, too close. He could almost feel the heat from its energy blasts searing the air around him. We're locked on, he said, his voice tight, but clear. Ready to fire. Do it, Maya commanded. With a final press of the button, a surge of energy rocketed from the Sovereign, aimed directly at the heart of the Kralexian ship. Akash held his breath as the blast sped forward, the moment stretching into eternity. Then, impact. The Harbinger shuddered as the blast connected, a blinding flash of light enveloping the battlefield. The massive alien ship bucked under the force, its energy shield shattering in an instant. For a split second, it looked as though the entire fleet would collapse, but then, the light began to fade. And then, something no one had expected, a surge of counterattacks from the remaining Kralexian ships. The tide had just begun to turn, but the battle was far from over. We've got company, Maya said grimly, her voice cutting through the comms. Prepare for impact. The real fight starts now. The war had only just begun. And humanity would not go down without a fight. The explosion still echoed in Akash's mind as he pulled the Sovereign into a hard turn, narrowly dodging another volley of Kralexian fire. The Harbinger's destruction had sent shockwaves through the fleet, but it wasn't enough to break their resolve. The Kralexians were relentless. And so were Earth's defenders. We've taken out one ship, but it's just the beginning, Maya's voice crackled over the comms, sharp and commanding. Akash, I need you to stay on target. Don't let up now. Akash's breath came in ragged gasps as his fingers tightened on the controls. The Sovereign hummed with raw power, its advanced systems responding to his every command. He could feel the heat from the energy blasts vibrating through the hull, the ship rocking with each near miss. It was a constant, maddening rhythm, but it didn't break his concentration. Not yet. "They're regrouping," Jonas added, his voice unusually tense. "They're adapting faster than we expected. I've isolated their command ship, it's sending orders across the fleet, coordinating their attacks. We need to take it out." "I know," Maya said. "Akash, that command ship is their weak point. If you can take it out, you'll shatter their coordination. We'll have a chance." Akash's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. He had never faced anything like this before. It wasn't just the Kralexians' superior technology or their ruthless precision, it was the knowledge that if he failed, humanity would be wiped out. The weight of the world rested on his shoulders, and the thought of letting down everyone who depended on him twisted in his gut. "Target locked," Akash said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He could see it now, the command ship, the largest in the Kralexian fleet, a grotesque structure that pulsed with energy. Its exterior shimmered with an alien glow, the ship's surface alive with patterns that seemed to shift as if the vessel itself were breathing. He hesitated for only a moment. The fleet of Kralexian ships was closing in, a wall of death and destruction. They were waiting for him to make his move, ready to swarm and overwhelm the Sovereign the moment he took the shot. "Akash," Maya's voice cut through his thoughts. "You don't have to do this alone. We've got your back. All of us. You're not just representing Earth right now. You're representing every single person on this planet. Every family, every soldier, every scientist who's put their faith in this fight." The words grounded him. He wasn't alone. No matter how many ships filled the sky, no matter how overwhelming the odds, he had the people of Earth with him. And that, more than any weapon or tactic, was his greatest strength. He nodded, even though Maya couldn't see him. "On my mark," he said, his voice firm. His hands moved instinctively over the controls, preparing the ship for the most dangerous shot he'd ever take. The Kralexian ships were closing in. They were moments away from launching another devastating wave of fire. Akash gritted his teeth, focused on the command ship in his sights. He could feel the pressure mounting, his pulse quickening, but there was no turning back now. "Now!" Maya's voice was filled with urgency. Akash pushed the trigger. The Sovereign's cannons roared to life, a concentrated blast of energy rocketing toward the command ship. Time seemed to stretch as he watched the shot soar through the void, the trajectory flawless. And then, impact. The explosion lit up the dark expanse of space, a brilliant burst of light that illuminated the battlefield. The command ship staggered, its energy shields flickering violently before collapsing under the force of the blow. But the Kralexians were quick to react, redirecting their forces into a tighter formation, ready to counterattack. "That was a hit, but not enough," Jonas said grimly. "It's still operational. They've got backup systems. You've got to hit it again, now." Akash's hands were already moving, adjusting the targeting systems. He could see the ship faltering, but it wasn't down. It needed one more strike to bring it to its knees. He'd given humanity its first chance, but now, it was time to finish the job. "Stay focused," Maya urged, her voice unwavering. "This isn't just about taking out one ship, it's about winning this war. Make this count." The pressure was unbearable. He could feel every second, every decision weighing down on him. There was no time for hesitation, no room for error. He adjusted the ship's course, lining up the shot once more. The Kralexian ships were firing relentlessly now, their energy blasts a constant barrage of heat and light. The Sovereign rocked under the assault, but Akash pushed through the pain, keeping his focus fixed on the target. The command ship was just ahead, its energy core exposed, vulnerable after the first hit. It was now or never. "Almost there," Akash muttered under his breath. The final blast was fired. This time, there was no doubt. The energy blast tore through the Kralexian ship's shields and smashed into its core. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, the ship shuddered, as if it were caught in the grip of something far beyond its control. Its lights flickered, the alien patterns across its surface flashing erratically, before the entire vessel erupted into a brilliant explosion. Akash barely had time to react before the shockwave hit. The Sovereign was flung backwards, its systems screaming in protest as its shields buckled under the force of the blast. The ship groaned, its frame straining, but Akash held the controls, unwilling to let go. "I've got it!" Akash yelled, relief flooding his voice. "The command ship is down. The fleet's breaking up." But Maya's voice was not one of celebration. "Don't get too comfortable, Akash. This isn't over yet." She was right. The Kralexians were relentless, and while their command ship had been destroyed, their forces were still formidable. They regrouped, reorganized, and launched another wave of fire, even more intense than the last. Akash's hands flew over the controls, his mind racing. The battle was far from over, and as the Kralexians prepared for their final assault, Earth's defenders knew they were about to face their greatest test. "Brace for impact," Maya said. And with that, the final assault began. The Sovereign shuddered as another wave of Kralexian fire battered its hull. Akash's heart pounded in his chest, every inch of him alert, but his mind remained sharp. The battle had raged for hours, and now, with the command ship gone, the remaining Kralexian fleet was circling like predators ready to make their final move. Akash's hands tightened around the controls, his knuckles white. The Sovereign was a marvel of human ingenuity, but it wasn't invincible. He could feel the strain in the ship's frame, hear the groaning of its stressed systems, but he refused to let up. Not now. Not when they were this close. "Akash, we need to get you out of there," Maya's voice came through the comms, steady as ever, but there was a trace of urgency beneath her calm exterior. "Their forces are too strong. Pull back, now." Akash glanced at the damage reports flashing on the control panel. The Sovereign was holding together, but barely. The energy shields had taken a pounding, and one of the stabilizers was offline. They were sitting ducks, and Akash knew it. Yet, despite the risk, he couldn't just retreat. Not when Earth's survival hung in the balance. "I'm not leaving," Akash said firmly, eyes locked on the remaining Kralexian ships. "If I run now, we'll lose. I'm going to finish this." Maya didn't argue. She knew what he meant. There was no retreat, not when humanity's future was at stake. "Then let's make it count," Maya said, her voice filled with a steely resolve. "I'll keep their attention. You get in close and finish what we started. But you need to move fast, Akash. This is your moment." Akash nodded, adrenaline flooding his veins. His mind raced through the calculations. He had one shot at this. The Kralexians were circling in tighter, trying to box him in. But the Sovereign had a hidden weapon, something humanity's engineers had spent years perfecting, and today, it was going to make the difference. If he could get in close enough to their flagship, he could trigger the detonation sequence that would collapse the entire fleet. Akash pushed the throttle forward, and the Sovereign lurched as its engines roared to life. The ship was already damaged, and the strain pushed it to its limits. The hull groaned under the stress as he veered toward the enemy. His hands moved with practiced precision, bypassing the ship's automated systems and taking manual control. He could hear the hum of the energy reactors inside the ship, the pulse of power surging through the engines, as he raced toward the heart of the Kralexian fleet. A barrage of fire slammed into the Sovereign's shields, sending the ship reeling. Akash clenched his teeth, refusing to slow down. The enemy ships were firing relentlessly now, a final attempt to break his resolve before he could strike. Each hit sent jolts of pain through the ship, but the craft held strong. Akash's breath came in short, controlled bursts. He was in the zone now, every action instinctive, each decision made in a fraction of a second. "Almost there," he muttered under his breath, eyes fixed on the Kralexian flagship. He could see the gaping hole in the flagship's defenses now, the vulnerability he needed to exploit. The fleet's remaining ships were preparing another attack run, and Akash had no more time to waste. This was it. He felt the cool sweat on his brow as he steadied the ship, lining up the shot. There was no turning back. Every system was a delicate balance of power and risk, and now it all came down to timing. Now! Akash shouted to himself, his finger pressing down on the trigger. A beam of pure energy, unlike anything he had seen before, streaked out from the Sovereign's weapon systems. It hit the flagship dead center, its impact radiating outward in a brilliant flash. The force of the blast tore through the hull, sending shockwaves through the surrounding ships. For a split second, everything seemed to stop, the battlefield silent, as if the universe held its breath. Then, the Kralexian flagship erupted in a burst of fire. The explosion sent ripples through the surrounding ships, and the fleet staggered under the force. Akash felt the Sovereign lurch violently as the shockwave hit, but he held fast to the controls, refusing to let go. His hands were shaking, his pulse racing, but he kept his focus on the wreckage of the flagship. It was down. It had to be. Did it work? Akash asked breathlessly, his voice barely a whisper. Maya's response crackled through the comms. It's gone, Akash. The flagship is down. But it wasn't over yet. The remaining Kralexian ships were regrouping, trying to adapt to the loss of their command center. They were more dangerous now, more desperate. Akash could see their energy levels spiking as they prepared for a final push. I need backup, Akash said, his voice raw with tension. They're closing in. Maya's voice came through immediately. We're on our way. Hold your ground, Akash. Earth isn't giving up. The remaining human ships, battered but not broken, surged toward the Kralexian fleet. It wasn't just about firepower now, it was about strategy, unity, and the raw determination to survive. The Kralexians had underestimated Earth, and now, they were paying the price. Akash gritted his teeth as the Sovereign took another hit, but this time, he didn't flinch. His mind was already working, anticipating the enemy's next move. He was no longer just a pilot, he was a symbol, a testament to humanity's resilience. And as the remaining Kralexian ships prepared for their final assault, Akash knew one thing for sure, Earth was not done fighting. Get ready, Maya warned. This is it. The final wave of Kralexian fire came crashing in, but this time, humanity was ready. The Sovereign's shields held firm, and Akash sent one last shot into the heart of the Kralexian fleet. The impact was devastating, and the enemy forces began to retreat, their remaining ships scattering into the depths of space. We did it, Akash said, his voice filled with a mixture of disbelief and exhaustion. Maya's voice was calm but filled with pride. You did it, Akash. We all did. Earth stands victorious. The battle was over. The Kralexians had been driven back, their forces shattered. Humanity had won. But more than that, they had proven something far greater, that when pushed to the edge, they would rise, fight, and overcome. And in the aftermath, one truth remained clear, humanity had not just survived. They had triumphed.